All right, Fiona. So now we're talking about viruses. Viruses are strands of hereditary material surrounded by a protein coating. So that means you've got DNA or RNA and then protein surrounding that information. Viruses have no nucleus that we talked about in the slides previously, no organelles, and they don't even have cell membranes. Viruses are very, very, very teeny. They are way smaller than cells would be, and they are only seen with electron microscopes. Okay, since they're only seen with electron microscopes, they couldn't even be discovered until the electron microscope was invented. So that's only been within the last 70 years, I think. But people knew kind of about viruses, that there was something that was making people sick, but not viruses specifically until the discovery and the invention of the electron microscope. Viruses come in several different shapes, as you can see here in the picture. You've got your helical, polyhedral, spherical, and then your complex. And they use a living host cell in order to reproduce. So things that you've heard of before, you're more familiar with, like cold sores, measles, chicken pox, colds, the common cold, the flu, COVID, and even AIDS. They're all examples of viruses. So virus multiplication. So once a virus is inside of a host, so they can't replicate on their own. They need a host cell. They need something else in order to do that. They cannot divide on their own. So once a virus is inside of a host cell victim, it can start to immediately infect and cause damage, or it can lay dormant, or what we call latent, and it can wait and possibly become active later in time. So an active virus's sole purpose is to reproduce. And as it reproduces, it takes up more and more space inside the cell, and eventually it bursts out of the cell, causing the cell to die because it has burst. And then the virus can go out into the body and infect other cells. Okay. So this is one cell at a time making viruses, but it's very quick because it happens immediately when that virus gets into your body. Or the viruses that are latent, meaning that they wait. What they do is, it's very interesting because they integrate themselves as part of the cell's DNA, and it waits there like a snack, and it waits until many cells have viral information, and then they all activate at once, like a minefield, like just one bomb after another going off. So it's many viruses bursting from many cells at one time. So it's slower at first because you are infected, and then it lays dormant, and then all of a sudden it's very fast and like abrupt explosions everywhere with cells and viruses. So that's crazy. That's like Ebola, a lot of different viruses that have those like longer incubation periods. COVID's incubation period was like 2 weeks at first. Then they were saying 7 to 10 days, but like rabies, for example, rabies has a incubation period where it lays latent for 3 whole months. So that's pretty crazy. So viruses can attack animals, which is what we typically focus on. But there's also viruses that could attack plants and different types of fungi and protists, and even prokaryotes like bacteria. Many viruses can only affect a very specific type of cell and nothing else. So, for example, the potato leaf roll virus only infects certain potato leaf cells, and in that one species, that's it. And then some other viruses have a broader range of cells that they can infect. For example, rabies can infect humans, but also many other animal hosts as well. So down here below, we have, some pictures of organisms infected with rabies. A virus, though, cannot move by itself. It has no means of getting from one place to another. So it could be carried by the wind, that's supposed to say wind, or inhaled by an animal. It can travel in water or body fluids. It depends on the type of virus, really. But once it attaches to the surface of a specific host cell, they can inject their genetic material into the host and cause that infection. So fighting viruses. So how do we do that? What do we do? Typically vaccines are used, but vaccines are used to prevent viral infections. So it's a before we get sick sort of thing. Okay, so vaccines are often made from weakened virus particles that can't cause disease anymore. We have vaccines for many deadly viruses like smallpox, polio, measles, and the mumps. So polio is the big one that smallpox has been eradicated from the planet, meaning no one gets smallpox anymore because of the vaccines and the spread of the vaccines. Polio is the next one we're after. So this is an extreme case of polio where this man is so deformed that he cannot stand upright. All of these are deadly, but we have vaccines for all of these things. We have vaccines for the smallpox, polio, measles, and mumps. But you have to get the vaccine before you are infected with the virus. If you get the virus, you didn't get the vaccine, or the vaccine fails because they're not 100%, then, there's really nothing that they can do as in terms of curing a virus. There are medicines that can help you fight the virus, but there's really no way to full on get rid of it like you would be able to do with a bacterial infection. If you have a bacterial infection, you can take an antibiotic and then that would get rid of that bacteria that you're infected with. But the first vaccine that was ever created was for smallpox, and that had a mortality rate of 30%, meaning 30% of everyone who got it died. COVID is 2%, just for comparison there, because you just lived through a pandemic, and COVID had a mortality rate of 2%, and smallpox was 30%. So that's pretty crazy. Edward Jenner was the guy who came up with this vaccine, and he noticed that people who got cowpox, which was not deadly or severe, didn't get smallpox at all. So he started working with people who had sores from cowpox. He would take the pus from those sores, and he ended up making a medicine or vaccine from that to give to healthy people. Of course, at first, people are very wary and nervous about vaccines today. So obviously, back in the 1700s, they were definitely scared of it, so they didn't want to take this vaccine. So Jenner first gave the vaccine to his children and his wife and himself, and then eventually people started taking that vaccine, and he really saved a lot of people, which is pretty awesome. So once again, vaccines prevent viruses. They do not cure them. There are drugs that can help fight viruses, help let your body be stronger to fight off a virus, but you cannot cure a virus. Once you get a virus, it really has to run its course until your white blood cells catch up to it and get rid of it, or you die. Antibiotics, like I said, treat those bacterial infections, but do not work against viruses. So if you were to go to the doctor with a cold or the flu and ask for antibiotics, they often don't prescribe those antibiotics, and they shouldn't prescribe antibiotics because antibiotics will not do anything for the cold or the flu, since those are caused by viruses. And then obviously there are other measures besides vaccinating to try and stop the spread of viruses, which once again we know all too well. Quarantining. We know improving sanitary conditions, cleaning things more, emphasis on washing your hands, and then controlling animals that spread disease. Both COVID and Ebola are both tracked back to bats, actually, and just the different food markets that have these animals in dirty conditions, and the virus spreads. So, okay. We do often, though, view viruses as harmful, but scientists are discovering helpful uses for some viruses, such as gene therapy. And gene therapy would use viruses to change the DNA of a cell, just like those latent viruses would. to eliminate certain genetic information that can cause cancer or can cause other genetic disorders. So if we can eliminate certain DNA by using viruses, then that could help us in the long run. Okay. And that is it for the notes. I'm going to post another video for you to watch on viruses. But for the 2nd of January, I'd like you to complete your vocabulary definitions, complete your section questions, watch the videos that I posted, and you will have a vocab quiz on the 2nd of January. I hope you have a great holiday and some time off, and I will see you soon. Thanks, Fiona. Bye-bye.